In this video, I'm going to show you a few basics, so the management window and how the views can be used. First, we open the previously created database. This is again with data from the Malta air traffic services. Many thanks to them for providing this data set. So after starting the application, you are presented with the management window, a list box view, and if active, an OSG view. First, we start with the management window. Here you have the type of database that is currently used. Here are the database objects, so basically all of the data source types. In this case, we have radars and tracker data. It shows the status, so if they are loaded or if nothing is done at the moment, and how many are being loaded or have been loaded from the database themselves. Here we have a checkbox that enables or disables the filters, which are defined here in the second column. Here we have some basic database loading configuration. Normally you wouldn't have to touch this. Okay. As it has been said, here we have the filter configuration. So currently this is disabled, but let's go through them just quickly. Each filter has a name. It can be hidden or shown. It can be active or deactivated. And then you have some filter criteria. So we have parametric altitude filter, a call sign filter, mode A codes, position as in rectangle in latitude and longitude, target address, so mode S address, the time of day, and the data sources that exist. So you can also configure data from which data sources you want to load. If you want to activate a filter, you simply activate it, set the values as you would like them, and make sure that the use filters checkbox is checked when you hit load. When you change a filter, the loaded data is not actually changed until you hit the load button again. This way you can change multiple things at the same time before manually triggering the load. Okay. The list box view. This is a table view of the data showing all of the loaded data in a textual representation. I'm going to go over that after we have loaded some example data. The OSG view, which stands for Open Scene Graph View, is a geographical representation of the data, basically a globe, where all of the data is depicted. On top you have a toolbar. I'm going to go over that in another video. The layers and some display configuration. Okay, let's start a loading process and go over the data a bit. When you hit load, a database loading process is triggered, and during the loading process you can already inspect where the data is drawn. If you are missing radar data, so it is loaded but not shown, make sure that you have calculated the radar plot positions. If latitude and longitude are not set in the data, they will not be shown in the geographical view. The loading process is done. Let's go over the details. So we started with the list box view. Here we have the textual representation of all of the data that was loaded in multiple tabs. So the All tab, which shows data from all database objects. For example, here there is depicted from which database object this target report was loaded. And it's all ordered by the time of day. There are other tabs with the database objects themselves, so radar and tracking data. On the right-hand side, you have the configuration of the view. So here you can select which variables are shown and the order they are shown in. So for example, SEC, record number, time of day, and so on. You can add and remove variables from this to customize the data that you want to see. The Show Only Selected checkbox we will use later when we go over the cross-selection and selection of target reports. The Use Presentation checkbox changes whether the data is shown in the database representation. So for example, the time is now in seconds since midnight, or in the representation that humans normally use when inspecting the data. You can also export the data that is shown here in a CSV file. In the OSG view, you can navigate the data, zoom, pan, also tilt. If you hit the space bar, you will return to the original center view. I will go over this view in more detail in a later video, so let's just go over the basics of this view. So here you have the geographical representation. You can see the tracks in white, which are shown here in the layers. So in the bottom you have the map, which is the background map that is currently being used. You have measurements, currently there are none, we will cover them in a later video. And you have the geometry. The geometry are the target reports that were loaded from the database, which are grouped as the database object, then the data source, and then subgroups. Okay? Here in the bottom, you have an information which tells you what the status is, so if it's currently loading, the currently shown time window. So in this case, we have 24 hours of data. Loaded is the count of target reports that were loaded from the database. Skipped is the number of target reports that were not shown, that were not drawn. So in this case, 0. Drawn is the number of target reports that you see on the display. And selection, we will cover that later. On the bottom right, you have a number of options how you want to display the data. So if we zoom in more detail, you can see that the target reports are connected by lines. How they are grouped together so that the application knows which target reports to connect is defined by the group variable, which can either be the track number or the target address. You can toggle whether these groups are connected or not. If height is used, then you can also toggle whether target reports which have no height information should also be connected. Then the height and configuration, how the height is scaled. Whenever you change any of these values, you have to hit the redraw button so that the changes are being applied. So let's try this for now with the height. Let's say we want to use the height information. And we hit the redraw button. The status goes into redrawing. And we are done. Now if you zoom in, you might see that the view is different now, and if you tilt, you can actually see that the height information is used to give you a true 3D representation of the data. A second thing I would like to show in this video is the time window filter. You activate this in the toolbar. This then filters all of the displayed data and shows only a small time window. If this is activated, there is a widget in the bottom that is activated which shows you the current time that is being used, the window length that is being displayed, so 60 seconds in this case, the possibility to automatically update, so go through the data, a play button, and then a slider which allows you to slide through the data. So these are 24 hours of data which you can go through. You can hit the play button, and then the time window is changed, in this case every 1 second, and the step size is 10 seconds. So this would be equal to a 10 times replay of real time. In the next video, I will show the more advanced features, so how you can configure the display so that it gives you the best view and best representation of the data for your actual usage. Thank you for your time.